All right. Welcome everyone to another episode of Learning Quick. If you are in the chat, and I think I always do this every time I get feedback because I listen to the stream and then it comes back through the computer. So I apologize for that. But if you're in the chat, let us know, say hi. Tell us a little bit about yourself if you're new to the stream. And the last several of these episodes have been like less technical and more conversational, which people seem to have really enjoyed. And I have really enjoyed. And I feel like I've been lucky to have some pretty cool guests on. And today I want to welcome Paris Chandler, not Athena, although we've agreed that Athena is a great mythological character. And I got that from your handle if people aren't familiar, and I'll grab your Twitter and put it in here as well. But I think both of us were kind of questioning what a title for this would be, and like being black in tech, like seemed maybe a little uncomfortable, but also seemed like really fitting. And I wanted to have hopefully a pretty open conversation around all of that and the things that you've experienced, the things that you're passionate about, the things you're working on, and everything in between. So if people have questions as we go along, please throw them in the chat, ask away. This is a pretty open conversation back and forth, hopefully. And anyway, Paris, if you want to give just a little introduction to yourself and what you do.
Yeah. Hi, I am Paris Chandler, but call myself Paris Athena. So I am creator of the community and movement Black Tech Twitter, which is on Twitter. It's a community of Black technologists from all over the world. I'm also founder of Black Tech Pipeline, which is a platform that connects employers and opportunity extenders to Black technologists from Black Tech Twitter. And so, yeah, that's me.
Sweet. And I think there's lots of intricate pieces in that to dive into from a lot of different perspectives. But I guess like just to kind of open it up, and I was looking at so you've got, I'm actually curious what this platform is. So you've got the blacktechpipeline.substack. Is Substack like an online blog that kind of helps up some of that? Okay.
Yeah, it's a blog and a newsletter.
Okay. Oh, so it does both. Cool.
Yeah.
And that was, so I've got like a couple of small like technology questions along the way too. That was one I hadn't heard of. A lot of people on the blog side have used like dev.to, and Hashnode now is doing their blog. So Substack was new, and the fact that that does a newsletter too, that's really cool. I didn't know that. Yeah. And I was reading through I've actually scrolled through a couple now, so I'm going back to the previous ones. But the most recent one that's on there is, I'm pulling it back up, sorry, is the It's a Problem pipeline. And you got into like some of your experiences, the things that you saw of being like the only black person in multiple companies that you worked for, and some of the things that come along with that I think a lot of people don't even know to think about. They've never thought about. I, being a white male, have never walked into a job opportunity and felt like I was the only person that looked like me. That's something that in talking with my friends and seeing lots of conversations that are going on in Twitter, Facebook, online, and in person is something I think a lot more about that I never did before. So do you want to start with just like some of your experience that is probably in this article, but if you just want to kind of share it with the people that are here in the chat?
Yeah, sure. Let me grab my wine. Let me take a sip of my wine.
We should have coordinated this and like both had a drink. I've got like leftover coffee that I've had for a while and a bottle of water, so we'll have something to drink.
Still great. Yeah. No, so like I got into tech not that long ago. I think it was almost 3 years ago. And I was coming from a background, I was like an esthetician, I was doing waitressing, I was a hostess. And so I was coming from the types of jobs where I was kind of always surrounded by people who looked like me. So thinking about race and noticing race wasn't really prevalent in my life. Like that conversation was there, but it wasn't like the whole culture fit thing. It was never like an issue, like nothing that ever came to mind. So once I entered tech, it's like this whole new world, and I wasn't with anyone who looked like me. I didn't have any coworkers who looked like me, and it wasn't like just on the engineering team. It was like in the entire company. Just there was no black people, and so there were a few Indians, there were a few Asians, and even then, like just there we didn't really form relationships. And when I got into these spaces, I noticed, they're all predominantly white. And so I noticed how they sort of interacted with one another. So the first time I got into tech, my first job, I started at the same time as someone else who was white. And I noticed how everyone gravitated towards them And with me, it's like everyone sort of moved. They were like a little more curious, a little more distant. Um, and every day that I walked in, I just noticed like that first week, like when I walked into the building, people were looking at me. I felt like a zoo animal, if I'm being honest. Like it was like they never saw a black person before, and it was so uncomfortable. And they would serve us breakfast, and so I would go and grab my breakfast, and people would kind of look at me like they never saw me before. It was different, and I was just really uncomfortable all the time. And then when I did interact with people, um, like I don't know, it was just different. Like they sort of talked to me as if I never have experienced the things they experienced. Like I think they assumed I came from maybe like no money and no like in a I don't know impoverished neighborhood. I don't know. That's just what they assumed.
Yeah.
Because that's how they would speak to me. And instead of like speaking to me with confidence, is always like questions. You know, um, it's really hard to explain, but
And it's
I don't
hard.
know. But
I was just gonna say, like, it's hard as much as I like have specifically been thinking about and having conversations about scenarios like that recently. It's also impossible for me and other people to really understand what that's like, because again, I actually like, it's different, but growing up, the schools I went to were predominantly black, and I honestly, for a long time, I was much more comfortable around black people, and I just gravitated towards black people because that's what I grew up more around.
right.
And like, I consider myself to have a pretty diverse group of friends, but at the same time, like, I've never been in that position, and even listening and hearing, it's still not something that I can really like internalize what it must be like.
Right. Yeah. It's like I feel like an example would be like so for me, I really love things like I love hiking. I love like trying snow. I've tried snowboarding and skiing and things like that. Like I've tried things that it seemed that the white people I was interacting with, they just thought I've never kind of did any of that. They assumed I didn't travel or and so they always when they spoke to me, they were like, yeah, we went here. You should definitely go there. And or they'll be like, you should really try this one day. It's not
Huh.
that expensive. And it's like what do you mean it's not that expensive? Like I can afford it. Like I've done that. But, it was always it was always assuming that I just didn't have exposure to the things they had exposure to. And it's just like I always felt less than. Like they were
Yeah.
just assuming. I don't know.
And you
Um,
talked about like in the article, I'm gonna actually link to that right now, actually. But in the article, you mentioned like the idea of microaggressions, and it's not like
mhm.
there's lots of conversations, and wherever we go with this in terms of general racism is totally fine with me. But there's lots of blatant racism, and there's also lots of things that people don't realize and never think about, and they are those microaggressions where you're talking to people differently, you're assuming things about people that you don't actually know, and it comes off in a way that I think needs more awareness, if that makes sense. And I'm assuming like that's like you're pretty outspoken, and I'm assuming that's a big portion of why is you want people to know. And like for a lot of people, I would imagine it's pretty eye opening to like maybe some of those people have now looked back on some of those conversations and thought, well, yeah, that maybe I shouldn't have assumed or shouldn't have said a certain thing or should have done it differently. And maybe that like helps open their eyes to handle the situation differently in the future.
Right. No, yeah, seriously. Like even if there's certain things that you're saying and you're not even intentionally like trying to be, biased or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think people just need to be aware of how they say things. Like you need to be really intentional and purposeful in all of that because for me, anytime, especially when it's someone white, says something that sort of diminishes my experience or my capabilities or whatever, for me, it's like I'm questioning, are you racist?
Hmm.
And that might not be the case, but that's what I'm
Right.
jumping to because that's the Black experience, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be really careful with how you're phrasing things and how you're saying things and questioning things because I don't know what else to think of you.
Fair enough. And I think I'm going down and scrolling through the article because you like quoted something similar to that of, so based on the way you were treated, I'm going to quote your article if you don't mind. You said, are they embarrassed to talk to me? Are they scared? Are they avoiding me? Is it the way I look? Is it because they assumed I'm unfamiliar with their lifestyle? Talked about that. Is it because I am very apparently different? Is it because I'm black? And then lastly, are they racist? And like,
Right.
maybe they're not, maybe they are, maybe they're not. But like if that's the way you feel, that you can't argue with that, right? Like that's the way it comes off, and that's the way things seem. And being sensitive to that and being more aware, I would imagine is just kind of like the overall goal. And even like this is aside from race, but a lot of what people talk about in tech is like you phrase this, or they phrased it to you as it's not that expensive. And a lot of people have called out comments like that in tutorials. Oh, we'll just do something simple. Oh, this is simple. Oh, this is blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff is relative. What's simple for someone is not simple for everyone else. What's expensive or not expensive for someone is also not the same for other people. And even with people who have money, it like you budget in different ways too, right? Like my wife and I keep a pretty strict budget. So like expensive, we might have the money, but it's not something that we like freely spend money on, because we like try to be pretty responsible with where we spend money. So all of it's relative. And I've tried, again, in like the tutorial sense of like trying to avoid, oh, we'll do something easily. Oh, we'll just do this, and so on and so on. So there's lots of like verbiage as you start to pay attention to that you can tweak and hopefully be more like encompassing and open as a whole, I think.
Exactly. And you know what? That like honestly, like this is a human thing, and you're gonna mess up, right? Like
Yep.
that's just life. You're gonna make mistakes. It's just like be as aware as possible, be as considerate as possible. Before you say something, really think like, wait, how could this be perceived, from that other party? Um, that's just life. Just try to be intentional about everything
Yeah,
you say and do.
absolutely. And I try to live by, I try to do positive things. If I mess up and someone calls me out for it, I try not to dwell on that as long as it's something that I take seriously for next time. Like I
Exactly.
certainly wish I could have done things differently, but it's not something I waste time on. I think about what the next thing is and how I do it differently.
Right.
Um,
You already did it. You made the mistake.
mhm,
You recognize it, you take accountability, move on, do better next time. And that's just all you can do.
yep, absolutely. And sometimes that doesn't even necessarily lead to forgiveness, right? Like if
Oh,
I don't know
right.
what the situation is, like it's not really about that. Like it may, you may not get forgiveness, and it may just be past that. But for you, and the next time, like you try to do better, and that's really, I mean, that's what you can ask of people, is to at least try.
Exactly. Yeah.
um,
That's it.
you got a first question in the chat from Refrigerator. Says, I would love to hear about Black Tech Pipeline. Is it open source, and can we contribute in some way? And lots of different aspects of this conversation. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and introduce like the idea of Black Tech Pipeline, and then maybe some updates, I think that's coming soon, which is pretty exciting. I know you've been working on it for a long time.
Yeah. So Black Tech Pipeline is not open source, and it won't be open source. That doesn't say we won't eventually have projects in the future or partner projects in the future. CTO actually be talking about. My fiance is saying he's CTO and he'll decide. He won't though. So what Black Tech? Sorry.
Uh oh, he's coming in.
So he's just so annoying.
Hi.
But
No worries.
all right, can I talk about Black Tech Pipeline?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I
Thanks.
just
All
need to
right.
make sure you're speaking properly.
All right, y'all
Okay.
figure out your messaging together, and then let me know when you're ready.
No, he's not even a part of this. So Black Tech Pipeline. So what we do is, and I've been conducting business for Black Tech Pipeline out of my Twitter DMs for like a year and a half. No, close to 2 years now. So what it is, I recruit Black technologists into these different pipelines. So I work with employers who are hiring and opportunity extenders who are looking to work with Black technologists. And so when they do get hired, I virtually stay on the job with that hire for the first 90 days. And so what that looks like is I'll do biweekly check-ins with them and see how's it going? Are you happy? What's your experience been like? Do you have the tools and resources necessary to be successful at your job? They give me feedback on the employer. With their safety and consent, I take that feedback and relay it to their manager or someone in leadership. And so we go through and say, this is what you're doing well. This is where you need to make improvements. And this is in terms of that specific hire. But then we also go through and talk about, what this company is doing diversity, equity, and inclusion wise. What are you doing to be actionable? Because I want to make sure I'm not working with performative companies, because I don't just focus on diversifying. You need to be inclusive and you need to be equitable. So we go through, we break down current systems and policies and things like that, and we try to make improvements where we can. And like the way I work with employers is always different. We have different goals for every employer, but that's mainly what I do, those check-ins and those consultations.
So there's again, like I love these conversations because every time a guest says something, I'm like, all right, there's like 5 things I want to talk about because those are all like just very relevant, I guess. So a couple of things. When people join companies in general, especially for the first time, and they get in their first role, the idea of you being able to have the conversation with their manager or management to provide feedback is very valuable, I would think, because most people don't have the confidence to be able to do that. And like
Right.
as a professional, now I've been a professional for 7 years, I'm pretty outspoken. If I have something that I think is wrong or that I would like to see improved, I'm going to share that thing. And the main thing that I look for is not necessarily do I get my way, but people are paying attention and listening and taking the feedback that I have. But that's not something that a lot of people, especially if they're joining in a situation where they don't see people who look like them, it's even harder to have some of that confidence and to have a voice and to feel like you deserve to have your voice to share. So I love the fact that that you're able to facilitate that conversation for them, at least to start, and then to have the
Right.
one-on-one conversations with them to get their perspective, to see if they're supported. And support means a lot of different things. And I've had conversations with people who start at roles, they don't have a mentor, they don't feel like they have someone they can ask questions to, they don't feel like they have people they can learn from, and they're just kind of like given a thing and put off in a room somewhere. And that's not at all the experience as a company that you want to give somebody, because they're going to leave, they're not going to enjoy it.
Right.
And that's not at all the type of growth that you want to provide for people. And I was at my job at FedEx, I was really like, when people came on, I wanted to work with them because I wanted to show them like, you're supported, you have people that can hopefully help you technically and on a career level as you like progress and gain more of that confidence and have your own voice and that sort of stuff. um
Right.
had a like a logistical question. So I don't know how many people that would like how many people that would be, but you mentioned like they would get to work with you one on one as you scale out. Are there like more people that would kind of represent you and be able to have conversations with people and be that virtual mentor along the way?
Yep. I actually just brought on. They're building out sort of like their organization right now, but I'm bringing them onto Black Tech Pipeline, a group that they do work for school districts within my city, and they do what is it, diversity, equity, and inclusion work. They're consultants themselves, and they're creating this new organization
Cool.
between them. Um, and so I'm bringing them on to Black Tech Pipeline to take over the consultation piece with employers,
Hmm.
and I will continue doing those one-on-one check-ins with the hires. Um, and this is because, yeah, just because I can't do it all by
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
myself.
that's the kind of thing that's with every, I mean, I'm not like a business owner myself, which by the way, I can't, is it big? I'm trying to say we got a new follower and I just want to shout that out. It's Big Jim follower, and Refrigerator followed a couple of minutes ago. And yeah, so anyway, thank you for the follow. Um, and now, sorry, I distracted myself and like totally lost my thought.
It happens,
I
you
know
know?
I shouldn't try to do too much at one time. You do have a question in here, maybe more specifically about the support for new hires. So they're asking, what does that support look like?
Hmm.
And I think you kind of
So
touched on it, but
yeah. So it's always different. So I like to cater to the individual because not everyone's the same. Not everyone works the same. Not everyone learns the same. So
yeah,
I'm listening to what that specific person needs. And so, there could be things like there have been, it's not really an issue, but like there are like tech companies that love to do catered lunch, right? And they will do catered lunch from different restaurants, different types of cuisines. And there have been candidates that I work with who are like, oh, I wish they would, do catering from this Black owned restaurant,
hmm,
that's nearby. So that's something I would relay to the manager. Now, I also work with that candidate to like be their own voice, right? Because I'm not going to be there forever, and they
yeah,
need to be able to have that
yeah,
relationship with their manager, and the company needs to be the type of organization that's like they want to listen to their employees and take their feedback and listen to
yeah.
whatever. So it always looks different. If there are they need sort of mentorship, any sort of tools, where they need to continue learning some sort of framework or a technology. I partner with other other organizations who are offering free mentorship or free learning courses. I mean, yeah, doing code challenges and things like that, practice code challenges. So I offer them connections to our resources and our network and our partners.
And the ability to tailor that, I think, is so important. So, like, I don't, you probably don't know a whole lot about my background, but I've done like videos and teaching in some capacity for several years, and officially taught an in-person boot camp here in Memphis called Launch Code last year. And I don't know if I've like publicly announced or not, but I will be taking on a virtual version of that boot camp starting teaching in October. And Launch Code provides the curriculum, and so they've got it structured out for a 20-week program. And one of the things I told them is like, I really want to get to know students individually, and that's what I did a lot last time, because like honestly, part of this curriculum might not make sense for people based on their interests, and I might be able to tell them individually like, pay attention to what we're doing and try to learn along the way, but like your focus based on the things that you're interested in and what you want to do should really be over here. And that may vary wildly between different people because they have different goals, they have different interests. And for me, especially like from the teaching perspective, like I want people to be excited about what they're learning, and it's much easier when it's something they just kind of enjoy more in one topic or another, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Is Nick T7 Chicken in Twitch?
Yeah.
Thanks for the. I got a compliment that I'm doing a good job with the question, so thank you. So I think you answered the support question. There's one kind of like buzzword that stuck out to me. Diversity inclusion is something that people talk about a lot, and I don't think I've quite heard of equity lumped into that. And I have my assumptions of what that means, but do you want to clarify like what equity is in that sense and how that fits in?
What people getting what they need specifically. So when you think of, I wish there was a picture I could show you. There's like so many like literal images of what equity means so that people have a better understanding. So if you think about like all these companies have gone remote, right?
Yeah.
Who has a home office? And if they don't have a home office, what does that person need in order to be set up for success so that they're able to do their job? So does this company need to send them a new laptop? Does this company need to send them a desk, a keyboard, a microphone, whatever it is?
Yeah.
And so you have to think of this in terms of equity. So maybe there's a position or someone who isn't able to get those sort of tools. What is this company going to do to make sure that they do get it if they can't get it themselves? You know, so you have to think about that in terms of equity. And it's like meeting people where they're at, you know, and not so much giving it. It's almost like equality doesn't work for everyone because like it just doesn't, you know. Does a very wealthy person need this specific thing that like no.
Yeah.
You have to look at the groups who do need it, right?
Yep.
Give them what their needs. Rich people have different needs, whatever it is. So for me, I like to phrase it like you're meeting people where they're at, and that's just what it is.
Sure. And that, I mean, it sounds like it's just getting more into like knowing the individual, treating people as individuals and trying to help them
Right.
in the way that makes sense. Does that also get into like as part of that conversation around like salary, like making sure that people's salaries are competitive based on experience and that sort of stuff?
Oh yeah. So there's like this whole salary conversation is so interesting, I'll say. So yeah, so you have to look at salary like this. Someone's asking for what they feel they deserve, especially based on their experience, prior companies they've worked for, whatever it is, and then what this company is able to offer them, budget-wise. So that's like this whole conversation where people sometimes are willing to kind of go lower, or they're not flexible at all, and they're like, I just can't take that. I can't take that offer.
Yeah.
So that's totally fine. That always looks different when it comes to the salary negotiation. But that's another resource that I offer is working with people who specifically work with negotiations and how to get the best salary and at which companies, you know.
And that is another thing. It comes with experience and confidence that, especially with your first job, you're just not gonna have. Like most people have such imposter syndrome, which we continue to have throughout, by the way. And we both talked about this on the last the one thing that we've done together. But especially early on, like getting your first job, you feel like you're lucky to get a first job. You feel like people are doing you a favor. And like my message has always been like, you deserve it, first of all. And I think what would help for people is if they could talk to someone like you or someone that they respect and that has some experience to be able to come up with what like a reasonable salary is and come up with expectations. And then if you have a decent idea of what to expect, if someone makes you an offer, you have an idea of whether it's good or bad or right on. And if you feel like you deserve more, to have the confidence and the structure, that's not the right word, the way to articulate why to someone. And
Right.
if you can do that and have support to do that, it would probably be interesting to realize, I don't know what the research would be, to realize how much money people leave on the table by just not knowing how to do it and not having anyone to
Right.
help them know that, like, this might be a situation where you ask.
Right. No, exactly. Please seek out advice and mentorship from the professionals, like the people who know how to negotiate. Because I've even put on Twitter the ways in which I negotiate my salary, and some people are like, "No, don't do that," or they're like, "Yeah, that is how
Mhm.
you do it." Everyone has like kind of their
Yep.
own version of what negotiating looks like. For me, with my first job, I said, listen, I am not taking that salary. I was like, I live in Boston. Do you know how much like rent is here? I was like, and
Yep.
I'm not, I was like, even the market rate for a junior developer, this is way below, what that is. And that was probably totally wrong of me to do, but whatever, I did it.
I I would
And
say you're spot on. And
I
I would
yeah,
say you're especially spot on because you have facts, like you've done your research. I think that's the thing that people could easily miss is people are nervous for it to be an emotional conversation, and it doesn't have to be. Like, do research and figure out what other jobs are doing and say, like, man, this doesn't seem like it adds up with everything else that I'm seeing, and here's why.
right. Exactly. And people are going to give you the reasons why they can't give you the salary
Sure. Yeah.
that you expect, and at the end of the day, it's really up to you. Is it worth taking this
Yep.
job then? How long, if you take it, how long are you going to stay there until you either ask for more, and if they can't give you more, head out?
Yep.
Like, you have to have a game plan.
Yeah.
So,
And sometimes you're in a position where you have to take it, and that's okay.
right.
Like, if you're, like, especially now, like, sometimes you just got to take a job, and that's okay. And I think you can accept a lower salary or hourly wage or whatever it is if that's the situation that you're in. But you should at least be thinking about, like, all right, if I'm kind of sacrificing a little bit now, how do I get to my next step? What do I need to do along the way? How can I structure a conversation with a manager later on to say, like, hey, I think I do deserve more money because, again, not an emotional conversation, more of a factual one. I've been able to do X, Y, and Z that kind of exhibits, like, I can do my job at this level and above. But again, like,
Yeah.
it's easy for me to say at this point because I've been in that situation a bunch. And I just want to acknowledge for people that are, like, early on in their careers, it's a really hard thing to do, but you should try to think about it and try to start having conversations, especially if you have resources with people that you can practice with or get advice from.
Exactly. Yeah. And then another thing is, like, if you can't negotiate salary, negotiate PTO, negotiate
Yeah.
working. Well, I mean, everyone's working remotely now,
Yeah.
but before, maybe negotiating how many days a week or whatever, a month.
Yep.
Just, you can negotiate it. It's freaking damn near anything. So,
You really can. And people don't know that, and they have no idea to ask for that. And those are some of the easiest things that they can do if they can't do money. They can throw
exactly.
on a few extra vacation days. That doesn't really mean anything to them,
Right.
other than, well, like, it was weird at FedEx, where I was up until January. There was, like, a really hard rule, which is really obnoxious, that, like, no matter where you come from, no matter what experience, you start out at 2 weeks vacation, and then you increment just based on years of experience. And I'm like, how are you going to convince someone that's been working for 20 years and has 5 weeks of vacation at a different company to join FedEx and go down to 2? It's a really
Right.
weird thing, and they were really
Yeah.
set about it. I imagine that's going to change soon. But
That's,
anyway, yes,
yeah.
great point. Lots of that stuff that you may not even think of is potentially negotiable.
Yeah.
Couple of comments from, I think, Nick answered one. Refrigerator asked, Black Tech Pipeline hires out junior level roles to different companies similar to a contract agency. And Nick clarified, could be for any roles, to be honest, from C-level to junior. Contracts are different. They usually need to talk to her about their specific needs. Anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, so I don't just work with junior developers. I actually work with like mainly mid-level to like those with 10 plus years experience. So
Okay.
Black Tech Twitter started because I was bringing exposure to the existing Black community in tech with the experience in the industry, right? And obviously, like, I'll work with anyone who's in the community, regardless of if you're just entering or if you've been in the industry for years, whatever it is. but yeah, like I do, like I've mainly recruited those with like 2 to 3 or 5 to 10 plus years of experience. Um, so yeah,
Okay.
I'm not
And
just
not just
restricted to
taking in the
doing this.
newbies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's like, I feel like a lot of the conversation, at least from my side, has been like advice on people that are relatively new in their careers. But
Mhm.
people in all different aspects of their careers could use help and connections and advice. And if it's, I talk about like kind of finding your voice. If you've never had a reason or support to find it along the way, like you could easily go into your career a long time and still not really know like how to express your voice and how to stand up for yourself. And people could use that sort of like assistance and mentorship regardless of what stage they're in.
Yeah, no, definitely.
We got some bits from Faraday Academy from Gwen, who's in the chat. Thank you for that. And she commented back when we mentioned imposter syndrome, that imposter syndrome also keeps people from properly negotiating. Absolutely. Like negotiating seems like such a very intimidating thing. And in some ways it doesn't have to be. In some ways it's going to be regardless. And like my general advice is like, give it a shot and see. Like you're only going to get better from having more conversations about it. And if you can make it as much of a research based argument, it will help you because it takes away some of the emotions out of it. If you can say, I've done my research, I found average for this role in this location, Boston being an expensive place to live, should be this. I'm wondering why your offer is this, or could you explain to me why, or whatever. The more of those that you can start to have, and maybe just practice with a friend on Zoom or Discord or something, I think the better off you'll be.
Yeah, no, negotiating is scary. I don't care how long you've been
Yeah.
in whatever industry you've been in. Negotiating is terrifying.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to lose that opportunity because you feel like you're asking for too much. At the end of the day, you are not asking for too much. You're the one who's making this company what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, you're building it up. You're contributing to the work that makes it successful. So you deserve, to negotiate for whatever it is you feel that you deserve. But yes, it is always going to be scary. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know what? Just like Nike says, just do it. Just jump in and do it.
That's one thing I feel like I've gotten relatively good at is no matter how nervous I am to send that email or to have that call, I still do it. I haven't,
Yeah.
for the most part, the last several years of my career, I haven't let it stop me from doing the things that I think I deserve to say or to ask for. And it makes me nervous as shit every time. And like, especially if you send an email and you just sit there and you think about it for the next like hours or days until they respond. We all have that. And there's some of that you're just never going to get over. But if you at least push yourself to just do it, you give yourself a shot that you didn't have before.
Listen, it is so scary. I mean, I've been scared to say no so many times. I've been scared to read emails from people, like, and I would leave it there in my inbox for days because I'm like, I don't want to read it just yet. Like, I'm scared of what they're gonna say. And now I'm just like, you know what? Like, the worst thing that they could say is no.
Yep.
And it's just like, if that's the case, then whatever. So
Yep.
now I'll like send an email, close my laptop, and I'm like, all right, whenever they get back to me, they get back to me. If I say no, no. If they send me a mean email back because I said no, oh well, like it just is what it is.
It
You
is,
just gotta
yeah.
do it. You jump into your fear.
Exactly.
Whatever.
All about it. I love it. That's exactly, you give it your best shot and it works out or it doesn't. And hopefully it does. And you learn from it. You learn from it both ways. If it does work out, all right, I can do this again. If it doesn't work out, think about like, okay, what could I have done differently and try to do it differently next time and make it work out, or go find a different company, right? Like that's kind of the beauty and the empowerment. Once you kind of find your self empowerment, and that comes with confidence and experience and conversations and things, then the world is like just open and you can go and apply wherever, you can have conversations, all that sort of stuff. So Refrigerator has another comment. I'm going to read this out loud because I can't focus to read it by myself and then also have a conversation. Refrigerator says, first dev job was going to be a 70-minute commute for 15 an hour. Commutes are one of my worst fears, by the way, especially that long. The only reason they didn't take it was because they wanted, I don't know if it's he or she, so I apologize for assuming, but wanted this person to be in the office at 5 a.m. 2 weeks later, this person accepted a job with Nike for 3 times the wage. It's difficult to know your value when you're suffering from imposter syndrome. I wish BTP, Black Tech Pipeline, was around for me when you were in that situation. It's great to hear about the mission. Yeah, like it doesn't always work out that way. Like you don't just go from something that's not a great offer to an amazing offer, but the more awareness you have and know what to expect and kind of know what you're worth and have the ability to wait and be patient for the thing that you're worth. Hopefully it ends up, for most people, that it ends up being the right situation at the right time, and hopefully better than some of the other things that you might have had the option to do.
Right. Yeah. Oh, first of all, that's horrible. The first offer that you got. I'm happy you did not take that.
Yes.
That's terrible. Oh my gosh. No, yeah. Sometimes you just gotta be willing to be patient. Like you need to bet on yourself. Like it's scary when you're like, oh my God, like I haven't had a job for like a few months or whatever it is, right? But you don't want to like kind of jump in and just take anything unless you like have to. That's a different story. But if you have the option to wait, I would wait and see what comes through, you know. Just because like taking a job and then leaving a week later because you got another offer that you've been waiting for, like you also don't want to burn bridges. You don't want to create this name for yourself and this reputation. So if you're able to wait, then I encourage you to. You don't have to. That's just what.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great to emphasize the if you're able to, because we talked about like if you're in a situation, you got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do, right? You got to take a job. You got to support a family. You got to pay bills, whatever. If you have the ability to have some patience, take advantage of that and use that to your benefit to get the thing that's right for you, I guess.
Yes.
Question in here from UX Tasha, which may lead into the question here. UX, does BTP help with UX roles, or is it only developer? And I think it's more than just developer, and not necessarily just UX either. It's kind of like project management and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's if you're a technologist, I'm there for you. So like I've recruited, so our community is mainly programmers, but I recruit programmers, designers, digital marketers, project managers, product owners, SREs, which I found out is a super hard role to fill.
What is an SRE?
Site reliability engineer.
Gotcha. Okay.
Very hard to fill.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're a technologist, I'm here.
There you go. Easy answer. Yeah. If you want to be in the field, it doesn't really matter. Another comment from Rizal: instructions for companies to partner with or source devs for BTP. Maybe you can rephrase. I'm not sure what the question is, so maybe you can rephrase that into a question, and we'll try again because I'm not exactly sure what that means. Faraday Academy Gwen says her first programming job was at a company that sold diet pills, also a far commute for low pay. So happy when she left. The commute part is what kills me. The idea of that kills me the most. Like the idea of having an hour and a half both ways of a commute is so much time. Like I'm really, really picky about making sure that I have time with my wife and that we are not doing work and things all the time. And there's just not so much you can do when you're driving or sitting on a train and commuting for an hour and a half each way every day.
Yeah, I just wouldn't. I just think that's awful.
Yeah.
Personally.
And yeah. And it sounds like I actually don't know, Gwen, if you don't mind sharing, what do you do full time now? I know Gwen, actually, Faraday Academy, if you want to throw your YouTube link in here, I would love for you to share that because you have awesome content and streams as well. If you want to throw in your Twitch, feel free. But I don't know what you do full time. If you don't mind sharing, I'd love to see that. And comment from Arpan, who comes in here a lot, says he's got to run, but thank you for the stream to both of us. So thanks for coming. And
thank you.
Yeah. Ro is here. Ro was on. Was it just last week? Or the week before?
I think was it 2 weeks ago?
Yes, because we were supposed to do last week, and then the power went out like literally 15 minutes before we were supposed to start, and I was like heartbroken. And then I found out later, so I went to my wife's office just to work with her, and I found out while I was there that the power came on like 10 minutes later, like after I had left.
So, oh my God. You know what though? That day kind of worked out. I don't remember why, but it did.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad. And I got to go hang out with my wife with her at work, and we went to have lunch, so that was nice. Yeah. So Rose said her commute is always an hour and a half. I live so far from everything. That's why it was great when my commute was removed for boot camp, because I was saving 15 hours a week just sitting on the subway. And like you can make subways and trains semi-productive. Like you can read and you can watch a YouTube video or a tutorial or something, but it's still like you're still just sitting on a train, and it's not the same as like being in your house. So.
And that's also like I said, you can negotiate working remotely. If they're not paying you what you deserve. I live really far. I'd rather work remotely.
Yeah, and it's like time and expensive. Like getting train passes. Like when I was in New York City, unlimited subway pass was $120 a month, and that's if you're like already in the city. Like if you're commuting on the train on the LIR or something every day. Like I don't even know how much, like a couple $100 extra to do that a month. So that's like $300 or $400 that you're spending on transportation to get to and from a job that you may not have to if you can work remotely. Let's see. There is a store on I'm going to pull up the link here too. So on blacktechpipeline.com, I'll put the link in the chat. There's a store with stickers and a couple of pins, and I was really just wondering like what you use to do that. Like how do you set that up? I really want to have like some things that I could sell, not to make a lot of money, just to like have a store and have the experience of doing it. So, and I don't really know where to start.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is on Shopify. So you just go on Shopify, use a template, decorate it to how you want it to be, customize it. For the stickers, I actually had a partnership with Sticker Mule. So they were able to produce, I forget, maybe 500 stickers for me for free.
Sweet.
And then I sold them. And then I just continued using Sticker Mule to reorder my stickers and then sell them online. And then I have actual merch, like clothing coming out, like sweaters and shirts and things like that. And I'm using Bonfire to do that. So
cool.
Check them out.
Yeah. They did, or I got it's the CSS, like Black Lives Matter. Have you seen that shirt?
Yeah. Did you use Bonfire?
Oh, I got it through them. That's where I bought it from.
Oh, you got it through them. Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah.
And that process seemed to go really well. So hopefully yours will too.
Very easy. Yeah. They make it really simple. Like you just they have everything set up for you. Kind of just say yes, click whatever, and that's it. Launch it.
Super cool. Yeah, I want to have that experience. Like I don't even know. So I've got this brand that I'm still like figuring out constantly. It's called Learn, Build, Teach, and that's what the Discord is named after. And I want to do more with it and like have some stickers, maybe some shirts and things eventually, and have like that sort of brand around it. And I would love to have the ability to sell some of that stuff on a site, not to make money, just again to like, I think it's just, there's something really inspirational about being able to sell a product, right? Like from an entrepreneur perspective and being a developer, you can do it. Like you can find stuff and you can get practice with marketing and designing, and you can bring people in to help or pay people to design some stuff. And then like you can build a store. That's a pretty like powerful thing, I think, as a developer.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. And then there's me. I'm like, I ain't doing none of that. I'm using no code tools.
Yeah.
But the fact that you have the skill set to kind of build things from scratch for free, I mean, hey.
But I think that's also like one of the things I wanted to bring up too is I think sometimes developers feel bad for not building stuff themselves. But at the end of the day, like if you're able to get a thing out, to build a thing, it doesn't really matter how you did it as long as it's what you wanted and what you needed it for. So using no code, low code, prepackaged solutions, like that doesn't matter as long as it's just about putting it together. Like nobody from the user experience perspective is going to be like, you didn't write this code, I'm not going to buy your thing, right? Like it's still the product is either good or it's not. It doesn't really matter necessarily how you built it.
Right. And if someone were to say that, like,
okay,
right. That would be weird to me.
Then keep on moving. Yeah, I don't know. There's
exactly.
Whatever. People are weird.
Right.
I think so. Funny conversation in the chat. Ro was talking about her boot camp, which was Juneau College in Toronto, and she was part of their first program that was virtual, I think. and people were asking about like her path after that, and whether or not she found success, and some questions for her. And she said she'd love to answer questions, but let's focus on Paris and James, which is totally fair. But Ro, if you answer away, if you want to, feel free to throw whatever you want in the chat. And for reference, Refrigerator, if you do want to know more, she kind of mentioned this on my YouTube channel. There's a recording is live of Ro and I's conversation from 2 weeks ago. Time flies. Is live on YouTube, so you can go and check it out there too. So will there be like, will you have an announcement for like the newer iteration of swag, like shirts and hoodies and stuff?
I'm gonna launch literally everything the same exact day.
Sweet. Okay.
The website, everything. Yeah.
And the best way for them to get notified of that is on.
I'll do it everywhere, but like Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, the newsletter, especially. Yeah.
Sweet. I'm gonna grab your Twitter handle and throw it in here again, just in case people didn't see it. And I'm gonna switch back over to. I shared the screen for a little bit to show some of the swag, and I'm gonna go back to just our camera here and pull open my notes. One of the things that stood out, and I've had a conversation with a few of my friends about this recently, and their choices on how they name their kids. Something you commented on is people being like prejudged on a resume based on a name sounding different, and how they may not be looked at because of that. And some of the conversations I've had with a few friends is they intentionally name their children something whitish, bland, I guess. Like, I don't know what the appropriate way to say that is, but they did that in the idea that they're not going to be prejudged on a resume. You don't see a face, you see a name, and you exclude it. And they made a decision, which seems really sad to me that that's something that they have to think about. And I feel like maybe takes away from some of their creativity as parents of what they may have wanted to name their kids. I don't know. Feeling kind of limited of just trying to open up opportunities for their kids going forward.
Yeah, I am not a fan of that. That's not something I would ever do, is like name my child something that may exclude them from facing adversity or something like that. But like, the opportunities don't stop at a name. It's like getting your name gets you in the door, and then they have to actually see you.
Yeah.
And that's still a factor in if they're going to continue offering opportunities or treating you a certain way. So you're not doing much there. However, the fact that people have to go to those lengths to, potentially like get offered opportunities is angering. It's frustrating, and it's sad.
Yep.
Like it just pisses me off.
Fair enough.
I don't know what else to say about that. That's the reality, and I hate it. I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, I don't know that you have to say any more, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty straightforward. Refrigerator commented, in the door is better than rejected at cover letter. I think like you could get into personal opinions about how you would approach that situation. I think at the end of the day, the focus more is like the frustration and the sadness that like it is a thing that is even a question of how you approach it. So to each their own on how you would approach that. Same to you. That's like whatever. That's personal preference. But it is just kind of a sad thing that it's something that people have to consider and think about.
Right.
Ro is saying actually, her name is, and I think it's Rojan. I think we talked about that before, and I think that's how you pronounce it. So I apologize if I got it wrong live in front of everyone, but she cut it down to Ro because people struggle with it, and it's easier to say Ro. And I think she kind of says, I suppose, maybe I'm kind of inferring based on text, which is probably not fair, but it sounds like I suppose is kind of like, people could also put in the effort, right? Like
right.
maybe it's not natural, but you could put in the effort to actually get it.
Right. And if you say it, before, if you know you're gonna have trouble pronouncing a name, just say, I apologize if I pronounced your
Right.
name wrong. Or you can just say, can you tell me how to pronounce your name? I don't want to screw it up.
Yep.
Just like your name is not your problem. Okay.
Yeah.
Like be named what people should be able to have whatever name they want. I don't care how hard it is to pronounce. The person on the other end saying the name should have enough respect to
Mhm.
say, hey, I'm having trouble pronouncing your name. Can you just say it to me so that I'm saying it correctly throughout our conversation? That's what it takes from them. And it's not that hard. You know, there's nothing you need to do. Your name is your name. That is that. That is no one's problem but the person who has an issue with it.
Yep.
Whatever. Okay? And that's that.
There, did someone clip that? That like that should be a moment that someone clipped, and we should just record that and like share it out individually. Love it. I'm just reading through the comments here. Refrigerator said, my parents moved my black name to my middle name and call me by that within the home, but I've gone by my whiter first name in public forever. Interesting. So again, that's a choice that you made, and the bigger picture is like, unfortunately, it's a choice that you even had to think about, and
Right.
in your career and the potential implications behind it. Interesting question from Scrawbill. Would intentionally mispronouncing a name be considered a microaggression? I can't imagine how intentionally mispronouncing a name would be micro. That seems pretty like evidently disrespectful, openly disrespectful to me.
Yeah, that's like you're like intentionally
Yeah.
being an asshole. Like that's very disrespectful. I mean, and I've seen things like that, like in comedy movies, where like a white person is calling, you know, a Mexican person named who has a regular name of like Tim, but they're like whatever Pablo or whatever. Like they're saying something like
Yeah.
that and yes, it's a comedy movie, but that's something that actually really happens, you know, and that you're literally just an asshole. You're a racist asshole. Like yes, that makes you disrespectful, and I don't like you.
And I think she caveated it. Is that anyway?
Who cares?
She
Who
put a
cares?
caveat on it slightly to say, or not putting in the effort, rather. So maybe not intentionally saying the wrong thing, but not putting the effort into getting it right. And I still feel, and I think you do too, that's pretty much the same
I
thing.
still think you're
Yeah.
an asshole. Put the effort. I'm a human being.
Yeah.
I'm a human. You better put effort into getting to know me and saying my name correctly. That you should not be treating me any different than someone with the name of like Sarah, which is maybe easier to pronounce for you. I don't know, but you should be putting in effort. Like we're humans.
Yep.
You treat us all with respect.
And I think I've always been really interested in cultures and languages, especially. So in high school, I had my best friend was from Argentina. His family was from Argentina. They like only spoke Spanish or mostly spoke Spanish in the house. I would spend the night and spend time with their family, and they would speak in Spanish, and I would just pester the shit out of them. Like, what does this mean? Why did you say that? Because I really wanted to learn. And I went on to major in Spanish and learned much more in their house than I ever did in like 7 years of like taking Spanish in school. Like never learned any more than I did just like being around them. And it was just so interesting to, out of curiosity, to want to know why. And I feel like there's like curiosity for me in names too, like where things come from and how do you pronounce it. And that like maybe has some implications into like, if it comes from a different language, I'm also curious, like, okay, so like if it comes from a language, is this pronunciation like associated with a language? Is it come from something? Like I feel like there's more to it than just like pronouncing it too. Like you don't have to know the background, but I feel like that's an interesting conversation to have from my perspective. And maybe some people don't want to talk about it. Maybe it comes off a little like presumptuous sometimes, but like I always think names are just interesting, especially when they're different than what you see normally, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's something that even comes up with like food. Like you're very curious as to like this from your background and whatever it is. Some people are really open to those types of conversation where they get kind of deep into their culture and all of that. And then there are some people who are like we think about cultural appropriation and why do
Right.
you want to know and like and it almost feels like we're being treated differently. That's not me personally, but I know people who just they don't like having those conversations.
Yeah.
And so that really just again, that depends on the
Depends on
person.
the person,
Everyone's
yeah.
different. For me, I don't mind to have those conversations. I'm
Yeah.
very open, but that's not everyone.
And I think that's something like that I try to pay attention to too, because I could easily be like way too eager a lot and like really
Mhm.
want to go down that path. But if it's something that the person doesn't want to talk about or is not comfortable with, or we don't have that sort of relationship yet, like
Yeah.
I certainly understand if that's the case. And it would be my responsibility to try to be aware of that and kind of take hints if they come, or not so subtle hints.
Right. Yeah. For me, I'm just like, I like transparency. Like, just
Hmm.
be honest right there and then, even if it hurts my feelings. You don't want
Yeah.
to talk about it, just let me know, and I will back the hell off.
Yep.
You know.
Absolutely. For anyone in the chat, I'm the same way too. So if you have something to tell me, let me know. I'm totally good with it. I want to I'll give like a few seconds for people. Like if you have other questions, I think these have been great. Throw them in the chat. And I've got more of a kind of a generic one. Just kind of a question about your general background in tech and your progression. Like you talked about, the transition initially being kind of a culture shock, and even not so initially, like continuing to be a culture shock. So I'm just wondering, like, if you want to share like your progression of like learning, getting your first job, getting to a second job, and then kind of where you are now.
Yeah. So I started off as a front end web developer with just knowing like HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript. And that's what I learned during my boot camp. And then I moved into an internship where I learned React and got exposure to React Native. So that's where I learned that. Then I got my first job I was a software engineer, but I was programming in React. So I was doing that for like a year and a half for a startup. And right before my 1 year anniversary, I got laid off with everyone else because it's a startup. And then from there, I moved into a digital agency where I was not using React. I was using HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript again. We're using Drupal, and I took that job literally out of desperation. I was like, I need another job right now.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is.
We
So
talked
I
about
just
sometimes you have to.
right. I was like, there's nothing I can do. I have to take the job.
Yeah.
So I took that. I wasn't using React anymore, but I was building out this mobile app that I thought was going to be that golden egg where like you become a billionaire off that application. I feel like everyone has that
Yep.
sort of passion project. I was building that in React Native, and I was just super passionate about it. And then that's when Black Tech Twitter actually started, and that's when my whole life changed. And so I don't do as much programming now unless I'm working on our website. Now I'm really just like, I feel like I'm really just a consultant. And yeah.
Super cool. I'm curious. So you mentioned being laid off by a startup and everyone being laid off by a startup. Was that something, had you ever considered that? Like, was that part of your thought process of joining a startup, that like this might change at some time and not really have a whole lot of heads up, or was it a complete shock?
It was a shock. So because I was so new to tech, it's not like someone gave me that warning, like, hey, when you work for startups, this could happen. No one gave me that warning. I didn't know.
Yep.
So it was like one by one, people were just gone through the startup. I was like, what the hell is going on? Everyone on the development team was safe, right? So that's what I thought, because everyone was still there.
Yeah.
And then the CTO quit. And then
that's not a
the
good
lead
sign.
developer, right? Then the lead developer quit.
Also not a good sign.
Right. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm the only one on the development team. And then I got an email from like the president saying, hey, we want to just have a meeting to go over like tasks in the pipeline. And I already knew. I was like, this is bullshit. I'm going to get let go. And sure enough, I did. I was let go. And that is what it is.
Yeah. And that's one of those, you mentioned you didn't know to think about that. And that is like kind of the, like two, if you limit it to two, like two potential paths. You could go to like a bigger company that's been around for a long time, or you could go to a startup. And like some of the differences could be, not necessarily in every situation, I'm being kind of generic, but like bigger companies in theory, like they've been around for longer, you're a little more safe because they've been around for longer and they probably don't just let people go for no reason. You're a little more secure in terms of like, you can kind of bet on your salary is going to be there for a longer period of time, maybe than a startup. Potentially, you could earn more money. Your salary could be higher, but that comes with a little bit of that risk of like, if they don't do well, then you don't know that they're going to be around for the next year or 2 years or whatever. Some of it also could be like depending on the startup. That's why I don't want to like paint too broadly. Like a startup could also like, because they don't have any money, they could also pay a lot less and be like trying to take in people and get everything they can out of them for as little money as possible.
Yeah,
So,
you're not. Yeah, the working for startups or like real startups,
mhm,
you will be wearing multiple hats, and you
yeah,
will be doing
very
more,
true.
might maybe doing more work than you're being paid for.
Hmm.
And that's just the startup culture. Um, so yeah,
And
but
those
you get
are
lots of experience, but
true.
still.
Yep. Just things, yeah, things for people out there that if you haven't thought about that before, things that you can think about going forward. I thought I had another question, and now I'm kind of blanking on what it was. So Black Tech Twitter started. Did it literally just start from the one tweet? Like, what does Black in Tech look like? Like that tweet?
Hmm.
Okay. And I think, how long ago was that?
December 1st, 2018.
I think so. I think there's been a couple of like similar things, but I think on that very first one, I remember seeing that and like commenting a few people that I had worked with and like tagging them in it. And I had no idea, like 2 years later or however long later, that was what became like a pretty popular and empowering thing in the hashtag, and like pretty commonly used, and has gotten so much growth and just like awareness to it. And then led you in, like you said, it changed your life. Can you talk more about that in terms of like leading to Black Tech Pipeline and your decision to go that route?
Yeah, so that was like when I put that tweet out, it was over a weekend, I believe. That same weekend and that whole week, I actually had just started that job at the digital agency where I was doing
Mm.
HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and using Drupal or whatever. So I had just started there, and that's when employers were contacting me through the DMs on Twitter, and they were like, we didn't know there were so many Black technologists. Can you recruit them into our pipeline since you have this new community? And I said, I wasn't a recruiter and I didn't have recruiting experience, but I said yes to literally everyone. I was like, it's like an opportunity you need to jump on, right?
Yep.
So I just said yes, and I started recruiting, and I was doing it for free. Like I made my own talent application, I have my own talent database, started recruiting from there into all of these different pipelines.
Wow.
And lots of people were getting work, and I was like, oh my gosh, like people are getting work, it's working, this is really cool. I thought it was going so well until I started getting messages later on. People were like, like, yeah, like you recruited us, but they couldn't keep us there, because there was retention problems. And
Yeah.
it was the whole culture fit and the culture shock and all that. And so I was like, all right, like I cannot just recruit people into these harmful spaces. Like I need to vet companies and make sure I'm sending them somewhere safe. And that's where Black Tech Pipeline came in, where I was like, all right, I'm gonna like legitimize this and create an actual package, create an actual business model. And that's what I did.
That's awesome. And it's one of those things, like, what a learning experience for you to have felt like you done so much good, right? And you did, regardless of what the outcome was. Like, getting people the opportunity is better than not having the opportunity, but there was still like the learning opportunity, and probably an eye-opening thing for you and many other people as well, of like, that's not just it. Like, it's not just the opportunity, it's the beyond that, and it's the growth, and it's the mentorship and the opportunities and the resources for people. So that, like, that seems to be like what the whole package is with Black Tech Twitter. Like, I'm inferring now based on what you're saying, or not Black Tech Twitter, sorry, Black Tech Pipeline, where it's this whole transformative thing. Like, it's not like you drop people off at daycare and then you're done, right? Like that,
Right.
it's like the engagement and the conversations. And one of the things that I thought about earlier is, I feel like with companies, you can tell really quickly whether or not they respect feedback and whether or not they take it seriously. And so like, you can be in a situation and you can have a voice, and it may not mean a damn, and they may like say, yeah, we hear you, and then not really act on it. And again, like, it's not that everything needs to be immediately acted on. It just needs to be considered and really thought whether or not actions need to take place and what those would be. Have you had like conversations and feedback with companies and had good reception of, like, you feel like you're actually like making progress and they're making progress, and things are going to be continue to evolve and be different with them going forward?
Oh yeah. So I vet companies. So when I'm speaking to them, just like I'm speaking to you, I'm just very transparent and very authentic. I'm like, listen,
That's
I'm going
what
to
it
give you
is.
feedback,
Yep.
and it's not always going to be positive, and I work with companies who want to do better. And if that means you're not doing good right now, I'm going to let you know, and we're going to work on the steps necessary to get you here. Right. And so, I'm working with a lot of companies now who they love it. They're like, we love that we're getting the feedback. We want you to hurt our feelings because we want to do better. We know we're not perfect. Like those are the companies that I want to work for. And those are the companies I do work with. There have been companies that I did work with where people who like developers and managers, they wanted to do better, improve their culture and their initiatives. And I would work with them, and there would be a standstill because the higher ups, like those executives and all that, they just were not with it. They were like, no approval, no budget, no nothing. They're like, I couldn't do anything. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to finish out my contract here with doing those check-ins and consultations, and then I'm done. I can't continue on with a company who's here to be performative. I'm not doing that. So there are companies I just won't work with anymore, and that's just what it is. Oh wow.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and that's like it doesn't necessarily matter where a company starts from. If they want to be part of the process and they want to like evolve, then that's who I would want to work with. And like I think that's what you're saying as well. Like people who are at least open and want to make the changes, instead of people who are companies who like can't or won't
Right.
That's really powerful. And I've been in situations like, again, I'm pretty outspoken in a lot of different ways, and you can tell pretty quickly whether or not people actually want to have your feedback and take it in and internalize it, and people who kind of do it for show, I guess.
Yeah, like we're not doing that here. I mean, there are companies who I've gotten on calls with them because they were interested in working with Black Tech Pipeline. Then they find out that I do those check-ins and consultations. They're like, what if we pay you more to just recruit and we don't do the check-in part? And I'm like,
kind of a red flag.
Like, I'm like, I know exactly I know exactly what you're trying to do. That's not happening. Like, you can't do that. That's how I know that's like a BS move. You're here to be performative,
That's cool. It's cool that you're aware of it, and like now, well, one, like you're in a position, it sounds like, where you have enough interest where you get to be picky and choosy about who you work with and make sure that like the work that you do has the most impact. One of my best friends has a wealth management business, started his own business, was a football player in college, and has been around athletes, has friends that have made it to NFL, NBA, baseball, everything. And his goal is to help people that become professional athletes from going bankrupt. Like you see so many people who all of a sudden at the age of 19, 20, 21, 22 are making millions of dollars, and the average lifespan of a career in professional sports is like or football specifically is like 3 years or something. Like it's not very long for the average person. And it's hard for people at that age to realize that like $1 million sounds like a lot, but it's also not going to last you very long once you spend it on houses and cars and things. And you don't really think about what the longer term implications are, because at a certain point, like you're probably going to have to get a regular job unless you're really, really like conscious and investing money and saving it in the right place. And he gets the ability, as he started to have more potential clients, to be selective, to make sure that he's working with people that actually care. Like if people are going to go off and do their own thing anyway, there's no real point in him helping them or like managing their money, because they're going to do what they want anyway. And so he gets to pick, like, to make sure that the time that he puts in can have like the real impact on people's lives.
Yeah, no, seriously. And I feel like it should be that way in any relationship. Like, you don't want to waste your time and energy on someone who's just not here to listen, I mean, I do that with I've done that with friendships. Friends who are telling me things about relationships, and I'm giving them these warnings. I'm like, listen, this person is like not here to love you the correct way you need to be loved. And they're like, I know. And then they keep going back to that same person. I'm like, you know what? I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. Do what you want.
Yeah. There's in so many different scenarios in life, there's only so much you can do. Exactly. There's a question in the chat from Eric. Thanks for educating us. One. And a couple of questions. Do you think things are getting better? Are companies hiring more Black developers? And is culture fit a bullshit term? I don't know how you interpret that or where you want to go with it, but feel free.
Yes, culture fit is a bullshit term.
Okay.
1. 2, are they hiring more Black developers? Not enough. It'll never be enough. No matter what they do, it's not going to be enough. Like hiring one black person into a company of 100 white people is not hiring more black developers. Each company needs to be doing more, regardless. And that's not even just in tech. That's in every damn industry, every company, whatever it is. What was the first question?
Do you think things are getting better? As the first one, I'm assuming like from the perspective of hiring more black people, more opportunities, more awareness for black people as a whole, I guess.
Right now, I feel that there's a shift happening right now. Ever since like George Floyd was murdered, there's something different about right now. Whereas I feel like, a police brutality incident happened, someone was murdered or protesting, and that kind of dies out. And then everyone's back to doing their normal whatever, right? I feel like this time people are like fed up. You're gonna listen and you're gonna do better, and we're gonna keep reminding you. And I don't care if you're tired of hearing it, we're gonna keep talking about it. And I just feel like something's different right now. And when something feels different, I feel like gaining attention is good, right? So I guess it is getting better, but it's not enough. We need to keep going. If that makes sense.
Sure. And I think, like, to be perfectly honest, from my perspective, like this time has been different for me. I have had a lot more conversations with friends that I had never had before. And like, this is getting a little bit personal and kind of transparent, but I've got a lot of black friends that have had so much success, and success means lots of different things for lots of different people, but they went to a good school, they got a degree, they have a business, or they have jobs and salaries and houses and families and things. And I feel like that kind of skewed my perspective a little bit for a long time, of just like seeing them have so much success and kind of not really paying attention to like the things that they've had to deal with in their lives that I've just never had to deal with as a white person. And so I like, this time has been different for me. And I know like you can kind of have two reactions to hearing that. You can be frustrated and think like, hey, we've been telling you this whole time. Right. And I understand that perspective too. But there's also like, every day is different for me. I look at things differently on Twitter. I listen to things differently that I hear. I ask questions that I never asked. And that's something like, regardless of whether or not I tweet about something or I have a post or any of that, like every day from now on, like my perspective is at least changed, and I can have conversations that I had never thought to have before. And like, especially thinking about having children and explaining things to them in the world, like these are things that are going to be top of mind. We don't have children yet, but at some day, these things are going to be top of mind for me and top of mind for them. And I do think there's lots of other people that have had kind of a similar, it's not like I don't know. I don't even know what you'd call it. Like, it's not some sort of transformation of some sort, just for a little bit of awareness. And it does seem like it's different for a lot of people in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Had a comment from Scrawbill about just kind of adding on to what you said. It'll never be enough. And just because we're in the door doesn't mean we're treated fairly. And I think that kind of goes to your point of like, finding that first opportunity for someone is not the same as finding the first opportunity and making sure that they're supported and have the things that they need going forward, and that like culturally things are evolving at companies as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's never going to be enough. But I think like what companies need to do is they need to be open to feedback. They need to be open to transparency. They need to be willing to hear things a typical person wouldn't want to hear. You don't want to hear that you're doing a bad job.
Yep.
You don't want to hear that you could have done this way better, and you need to hold yourself accountable. You need to be open to that. When you are uncomfortable, that means that you're making change, right? So everyone needs to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Be open to that transparency and that feedback, because how else are you going to do better? You don't know, especially when you don't have to go through it daily. Listen to those who do.
Yep, absolutely. One, just kind of on the taking feedback thing, like no matter how much we think we want feedback, it's hard to fight your initial reaction of like self-defense. And I consider myself to be really open to feedback. But I still have immediate reactions that I think a lot of people do, of like, no, that can't be right. That's not right. And so just a piece of advice for people is like, if you get a negative piece of feedback, take that and don't respond immediately. Take it and think about it and spend some time with yourself and kind of factor it in with your life and where you are, and see if it makes more sense after you like take a second to calm down and take some time to think about it for yourself, and then maybe respond to it later. But give yourself a fair chance. And not all feedback is appropriate feedback. Like some feedback that comes in, you have to filter out because it doesn't really make sense. But I think with feedback that does come in, giving it a shot and really considering if it's something that you need to work on or change or whatever is the value of the feedback. So question from Faraday from Gwen. I think companies, or statement in question. I think companies that want people with only CS backgrounds from good schools miss out on a lot of diverse candidates. They say they want more diverse candidates, but then shoot down so many because of arbitrary requirements. Any thoughts? I've got lots of thoughts on this, but I'll let you start off.
Yeah, I just feel like, well, first of all, like, I just think that's BS. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It's BS. It's stupid. It's like you want something, but then every opportunity that comes by to take it, there's something wrong. There's just something, like, and you can't do it. And it's like, well, how badly do you actually want this? Because if you did want it, you're gonna have things in place to make sure it's gonna be successful, right? And so you're never gonna get the perfect candidate because it just doesn't exist. You're never gonna get the perfect person, but you gotta be willing to build that up and set things up for them to become successful, become whatever it is that, you know, this company wants to see them be. Because otherwise, what do you really want? Do you want to put a word out there that you're looking to become diverse so that it looks like you want to be diverse? Like, it's just BS. I just don't believe it.
Yep. And I think a lot of, especially like the non-traditional background, so like not having a CS degree from a top university, I think has gotten a lot better in general. And this is part of me being like on the hiring side at FedEx specifically, where like it was a pretty hard requirement that you have a degree and it be in a related field for a long time. And while I was there, I was bringing in people that I knew and recommending people that I knew that were like more than qualified and didn't have necessarily the traditional background were able to get jobs at FedEx. And I saw that change, and I saw there be some initiatives of taking people out of boot camps, which I've shared this a lot with people. Like, I have a formal computer science degree, and I look at people coming out of boot camps, and so many of them are so much more prepared for a job than I was coming out of my formal degree. And part of it was like, for me, I didn't take it seriously as like an appreciation for what I was doing. I was just getting good grades because I was in college and that's what I was supposed to do. And some of it was like the education also was not as hands-on and as practical. So like people coming out of boot camps were much more, or a lot of them, much more prepared than I was coming out of school. And I think you're seeing more boot camps, you're seeing more hiring out of boot camps, which is a great thing. But I think it's still, and this is more generically, like to the same point, like has a long way to go where you can't just not look at people because they don't have what you expect the background to be. Like some people go through different situations. They can't afford to go to college or whatever.
This is why I talk about equity. So think about it. The Black and brown communities are the ones who are truly underserved, right? They're super underserved. So they have to find routes where it's affordable to get an education or to get into programs. And so boot camps are one of those. Yes, there are Black and brown people in actual universities and all of that, but they're also in boot camps. They're finding more equitable ways of getting into the industry. And so you need to want to look, if you want to diversify, then you need to look at all options, and boot camps is one of them. You need to get over the fact that they couldn't afford to go to even if they could and they just chose not to, whatever it is, like this is where equity comes in. It's so important.
Yeah.
Also, James, check your message is in Discord.
In Discord? Why? Like something from you?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't, just because of the way that, like, I'm screen clipping.
Okay.
I'm kind of limited on my bit. Can you send me a DM in Twitter?
Okay.
Sorry, yeah. Oh, yeah, I could check the mobile Discord app. Thank you, Refrigerator, for the comment. All right, give me a second. Is this something like I need to see now to respond to, or?
Yeah, it's kind of awkward.
Oh, no. Yeah, sorry. Just tell me. You've got to go. All right. Thanks for coming. Yeah, transparency. Just tell me to shut well, shut up. Anyway, thank you so much for being
no,
here.
I'm having so much fun. I'm so sad I have to jump off.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I will cut. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for the comments. Thank you for being here and being transparent and being open for coming on. I've enjoyed it. I've had a blast. You've got to go. That's totally fine. Understandable. Thanks for letting me know. And we will catch everyone next time.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.